Hello and welcome back to the Direct Capital channel, and welcome to today's update on Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum. We'll be talking about what we were talking about yesterday. It's going to be an update from yesterday, and we're also going to be talking about where we are in the market cycle. Where are we in this current Bitcoin bull run? So without further ado, let's dive right in. This is the 4-hour chart. Yesterday I worried about this playing out before I even uploaded it. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, but since yesterday's video, we've seen a breakout and also a pullback as well. So I'm not going to be focusing too much on the 4-hourly because it is a lower time frame. I prefer to zoom out, focus on the macro. Focus on the macro perspective, and we're going to be zooming out more and more as we progress throughout this market update today. So on the daily, like we spoke about yesterday, guys, we have to maintain the range high as a new support. And on the daily, even though it broke out from that flag and it pretty much pulled back the entirety of that move, it's okay as long as we maintain above the range high as a support, and so far it's still doing that despite wicking to the downside every now and then. What we need to note is that Bitcoin wants to exit its monthly range of around 7,750 to 9,300. So every time we've seen a breakout in the new uptrend to the upside, we've seen a new yearly high. So this is where we saw a breakout past the range high resistance and then new yearly highs for 2019. And it looks like the correction is over, like I spoke about yesterday. So we're probably going to see a new uptrend and then continuation to the upside. But of course, we need to claim this range high as a new support on the monthly. And so far, well, we are seeing dipping as we speak. So we're going to see a bit of volatility going into the monthly close. So there's going to be a lot of excitement going into the monthly close, as it always is, as it always has to be. This is what we love about this game. But we need to bear in mind that if the monthly closes this way, then we probably will see a rejection of some sort. We're going to see a pullback on this massive 30% candle from the correction bottom pretty much. So we'd probably see a pullback perhaps to the range equilibrium, so that's the midpoint of this 7,750 to 9,300 monthly range. So if we see some sort of action like this and then a reversal to the upside or even dip a bit lower, that's all well and good because we have established a new uptrend anyway. But what I want to focus on still is that the resistance is the blue line. So we are trying to escape this monthly range, but the blue line is that resistance that used to be a support quite a while ago. So in July, August, those sort of months, that's where we saw the blue line figure as a support, and then we saw a breakdown, and ever since we've not been able to breach this 9,500 resistance. So that's going to be a point of reference that we need to bear in mind. We want to break past this level and turn it into a support, but at the same time we have to also bear in mind this monthly range right over here. So going forward for the next few hours, it's going to be locked in this very narrow, unsustainable range, because whenever we see this sort of compressing in price, that's just an unsustainable environment for price action, and we tend to see volatile movements to the upside or to the downside that follow from this price compression. So I am looking for this monthly close. It's going to be interesting what we see. That monthly close is pretty important. For the time being, unsustainable range at these highs. We need to see that monthly close above the range high. And if we get that, that's a very positive sign. But if we don't get that, we'll probably see a pullback, which isn't a bad thing altogether because many people want to enter Bitcoin now that they've seen this sort of strong price action, such a strong recovery. So that's about it for Bitcoin. I want to briefly cover Ethereum before we talk about where we are in the market cycle. Yesterday I spoke about this 200 DEMA to hold so that it can springboard price to higher levels, and of course it did wonderfully. That's an 8% return since yesterday, so that's a trader's dream. That's what we live for, such volatile movements. So Ethereum was able to do that for the first time in a while. It was able to retest this 200 EMA for the first time in a considerable amount of time. So I'm very happy that we saw that volatile movement, but of course we need to bear in mind that there is a blue diagonal resistance right over here. It's a lower high resistance, so we are seeing lower and lower highs, so this is going to be figuring as a resistance in the short term. And it's been a picture perfect rejection right over here. I had this line on the chart for quite some time already, so I'm happy that it's playing out. For the time being, I'm not going to be entering any new positions after all this volatility. This is in fact more of an exit signal, if anything else, if we're looking at all these different resistances piling up. And of course, you want to look for confirmation in terms of if we can get a pullback. For Ethereum, that could be a pullback to the 200 daily EMA. If we get that, that would be interesting to see. But at the same time, we need to focus on this sort of scenario, because we've seen bounces from the 200 daily EMA followed by unsuccessful second retests. Something to think about going forward. But of course, the weekly does look fine. It does look great. We always have to look at the macro, because you can get lost in the daily and the lower time frame, but it's very important to just zoom out, gain that clarity of perspective. And as long as Ethereum is in the 160, 360 channel right over here, as long as it maintains above this level, I'm bullish on Ethereum, especially if it maintains itself above the 200 daily EMA. Going forward, very briefly about Litecoin, the same thing. It's the same situation as Ethereum. I wanted it to hold this black level right over here, the 200 daily EMA, and it did just that. And that's very good, because we now have this level which previously figured as a resistance, and if we see a pullback, then we're probably going to see Litecoin want to claim this level as a new support. If it can't do that, then we might have to consider something over here. But in the meantime, this is the first level that I'd like to see some price strength confirmation. But in any case, since yesterday when I spoke about Litecoin, that's a 10% rally to the upside, which is a trader's dream, like I mentioned with Ethereum. So all well and good with that. So we've looked at the 4 hour, the 1 day, the weekly, the monthly. Let's zoom out and let's have a look at the entire cycle and where we are at the moment. So if we cycle back to April 1st of 2019, we know that this was where we saw the very beginning of the bull market. So on April 1st, we saw that 30% rally to the upside, and this was pretty much the takeoff. This was the stealth phase where people were still in disbelief. They didn't really feel that we're entering a new bull trend. So that was the very stealthy phase of this market cycle. But since then, we've seen that takeoff materialize into that first yearly high, the 2019 yearly high of 13,900. So we saw a first sell-off after that, and then the bear trap, which is pretty much people panic selling at around 6,400, which was essentially most likely the bottom of the Bitcoin correction. So it was a bear trap, and since then we've seen a recovery all the way back to 9,500. So after all, we just need to bear in mind that we're in the awareness phase. People are starting to pay attention to Bitcoin. They're seeing all this bullish movement as of late, and we're going to be in this awareness phase probably. You're definitely leading into the halving. I mean, we're only 101 days away from the Bitcoin halving, so I'm expecting probably some nice price movement going into the halving, probably followed by a retrace, because this is what history suggests. But at the same time, we need to bear in mind that we're going to be in this awareness phase for a while. Of course, we're going to be recovering out of this first sell-off, and of course into media attention, the mania phase that's still away, a little while away, but it's definitely coming. It's something to be prepared for, and any correction for me is going to be a good chance to just try and accumulate in that new confirmed uptrend. So we saw that bear trap, and that's the 6,400 level where people panic sold. But it's important to also know that the bearish trap also extends to the mentality of people, how they think about Bitcoin, how they think about the bull run. Many people still believe we're in an extended bear market. Many people think the Bitcoin halving is priced in. All of these mental barriers, perhaps trauma from the bear market, trauma from this recent correction from 14,000 to 6,000. All of these things build up to a bear trap in of itself. It's not just panic selling at the bottom and panic selling at these lows on the bottom of the correction. It's also about the attitude that you have going forward and this general disbelief that people have, it's important to try and get over that past trauma of the bear market, because of course many people lost money, and that's just a very cold, sad reality of things in the market, which is a non-zero sum game where somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. So it's not all that pretty, but we have to bear in mind that there is a significant opportunity ahead of us going forward, and Bitcoin is just coming out of its first sell-off. It's important to get past this trauma of the bear market and of the correction, because it's going to be holding people back, and it's going to make them miss out on an opportunity, a magnificent opportunity. So it's definitely time to adapt and start to focus a little bit differently on Bitcoin and think about it a little bit differently than when we did on the correction during this first sell-off, because we fall into these trading psychologies. We start to be a bit more risk averse, protective of our capital. It's more about capital preservation rather than capital and profit maximization. So we shift our strategies, we shift our risk management, but it's important to start to shed ourselves of that phase, because this in of itself was a phase in the market. It was a phase within the awareness phase. So it's just important to understand that we're now escaping, we're exiting this phase slowly but surely, and it's very important to adjust our strategies so that we don't get stuck in a reality that no longer exists. This market phase is close to being over, if not already over by now. So it's important to just adjust in this new market phase and open yourself up to opportunity and the gains that are yet to come for Bitcoin. And tying in with this, during this sort of disbelief phase, around May, the end of May, around June, we were only 8 weeks into the current bull market. And I emphasize that this is going to be our cryptocurrency bull market map. And of course, I spoke about how we were here. We were pretty much at the beginning of that first wave in the bull market. But of course, since then, a lot of time has passed. So I've updated the new cryptocurrency bull market map. We've seen the first rally to 14,000, followed by a 53% correction to around 6,500. And now we're slowly exiting this first sell-off, and we've overcome this sort of bear trap for investors. So it's very important to just understand that we are in that recovery phase. We are slowly creeping out of this first sell-off. We're slowly recovering to the upside, and that's very important to just understand where we are situated in this current market cycle, with 100 days away from the Bitcoin halving. Speaking of the Bitcoin halving, in less than 1 week, I'm hosting a live webinar about the Bitcoin halving and its effect on Bitcoin's price. Feel free to join. For just a small price of a cup of coffee, you can join me in the live webinar and ask questions and get to know more about the price action and how the halving affects Bitcoin's price before and after. I'm going to be talking about all these different things I haven't examined yet publicly, and it would be awesome to see you there and answer all of your questions. So feel free to reserve your spot by pre-ordering in the link down below. But let's speak about the bull market. Let's continue talking about the Bitcoin bull market. This is a series of tweets that I've been posting every week since the bull market began, really. In my opinion, we're almost 30% through the Bitcoin bull market. And of course, this ties in with the map right over here that we still have wave 3, 4, and 5 to enjoy. So that's 70% of the bull market still yet ahead of us. So it's very important to just keep that in mind. In my opinion, the bull market might end near the end of 2021 in December. Around that time, it could be a bit longer, it could be a bit shorter. Nobody really knows, but those are my estimates based on what I've seen in the price action when I was looking at Bitcoin's price in the context of the Bitcoin halving. And speaking of the Bitcoin halving, once again, the 70% of the bull market that we still have yet to enjoy, the euphoria phase and whatnot, these are the figures to pay attention to when looking and considering that phase that we have still yet to enjoy. After halving 1, over 3,400% gains. After halving 2, 4,080% gains. So of course, most of Bitcoin's growth as a result of the halving occurs after the halving. So Bitcoin definitely has a lot of room to grow and a lot of time to see this growth materialize, especially months after the halving going into the end of 2020 and 2021. So it's going to be an interesting ride that I hope you guys are going to join me on. And that's just about it for today's video. If you like this video, please leave a like. Feel free to subscribe to this channel because I'm more than happy to continue producing these videos, pumping out this content so that you can enjoy and find value in it. So if you found this content valuable, please leave a like, subscribe for more videos, and of course, feel free to pre-order your spot at the Bitcoin Halving live webinar next week, February 6th, 7 p.m. UTC. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you soon.